Welcome to Natural Fluency.
You've been studying English for years, maybe 5, maybe 10. So why does your pronunciation still sound off? You can hear individual words just fine, but the moment they flow into a full sentence, everything blurs together. And when you try to say it yourself, your speech sounds choppy, stiff, nothing like a native speaker. It's not because you don't know how to shape your mouth. It's because the underlying sound system of English is fundamentally different from the one your native language runs on. In this video, I'll break down how English pronunciation actually works at its core and why the way most people practice inevitably hits a ceiling. Once you understand this one principle, your entire approach to pronunciation will shift. In the previous sessions, we used breathing, core muscles, and physical sensation to build pressure from the abdomen up through the throat. That wasn't just a random exercise. It was laying the groundwork for real English pronunciation. And after today's explanation, I think a lot of things are going to click into place for you. So, let's begin. In many languages around the world, every syllable gets roughly equal time and weight. For example, when you say this word chocolate in Spanish, the syllables come out with almost equal length and force. This is called a syllable-timed language. French, Spanish, Japanese, and Korean are all closer to this style, even if the degree varies. But English works very differently. English is what's called a stress-timed language. That means the rhythm isn't built by giving every syllable equal energy. Instead, everything revolves around stressed beats. The sound builds toward the stress, hits it, and then releases as it moves on. Let me show you with a simple sentence. I went to the store to buy some bread. If you read it in a syllable-timed way, you give almost equal force to every syllable. I went to the store to buy some bread. It may sound clear, but it doesn't really sound like natural English. A native speaker is more likely to say it like this. I went to the store to buy some bread. Store and bread carry the stress, and the other parts move more quickly and lightly. The time between the stressed beats stays relatively even. In English, only about 30 to 40% of syllables carry strong stress. The remaining 60 to 70% get reduced or softened. In a syllable-timed language, nearly every syllable carries similar weight. That single structural difference is the biggest reason English pronunciation feels so hard. So, why does practicing through your native language hit a ceiling? Because when you hear English, your brain automatically filters those sounds through your first language's sound system. The brain of a syllable-timed language speaker tends to chop sound into equal syllable chunks. A native English speaker's brain groups sound around stress beats. Same sentence, completely different processing. And that gap is where the struggle lives. The same thing happens when speaking. Instead of building a new sound system from scratch, most learners just patch their native system to sound a bit more English. That's why, no matter how much they practice, they never actually leave the cage of their first language. Many people think a foreign accent is simply unavoidable. Others believe that if they just keep repeating out loud, their pronunciation will eventually fix itself. Of course, repetition matters. It does help. But repetition alone doesn't create real English rhythm. That's why so many learners feel a disconnect. They can understand what they hear, but when they open their mouth, it doesn't come out the same way. The rhythm still feels off, and their speech still doesn't flow. Stay trapped in that loop, and you actually drift further from how humans naturally acquire language. The method stops helping and starts becoming the barrier. So then, how do humans originally learn pronunciation? Think about babies. Babies don't study pronunciation separately. They don't learn tongue position from a textbook. They don't analyze lip shapes. And yet, just by listening, responding, and repeating, they develop remarkably precise pronunciation in their native language. People often say, babies have a special ability that adults lose. But that misses the real lesson. Language development research shows something fascinating. By just 7 or 8 months, long before babies can say real words, they can already detect the rhythm patterns of their native language. They don't start with individual sounds. They absorb the overall rhythm and intonation first. Then, inside that larger pattern, the individual sounds gradually fall into place. Now, of course, adults can't learn exactly the same way babies do, but this still gives us a very important clue. Pronunciation isn't built by listening and imitation alone. It becomes far more solid when listening, rhythm, body sensation, and repetition all work together. The problem is that many learners start in the opposite direction. They practice one sound at a time and then try to combine those sounds into sentences. That practice isn't useless. It does help to some degree. But by itself, it usually doesn't create real English rhythm. Why? Because English isn't a language where you snap sounds together like Lego blocks. Each sound is shaped by the rhythm and stress of the sentence it lives in. And this brings us to the core principle of today's video. In English pronunciation, always start from the whole, then work your way down to the parts. The most important thing to find first isn't how to treat every sound equally. It's knowing which sound becomes the center. In other words, which syllable carries the stress. English pronunciation is completed through the whole process of stress beginning, rising, and releasing. Think of it like the high jump. You can't clear the bar just by copying the body position at the peak. You need the run-up. You need the takeoff at exactly the right moment. And after the bar, you need the follow-through and the landing. English pronunciation works the same way. If you look only at the one moment when the stress bursts out, that's not enough. Before that moment, the sound is building towards the stress. After that moment, it releases and continues naturally. When this whole flow is connected, the sound begins to feel like real English. That's why the true reference point for English pronunciation shouldn't be some vague middle level of sound. It should be the stressed sound, where the energy is the clearest. This is where speakers of syllable-timed languages fall into a trap. They unconsciously treat a mid-level effort as the baseline and then try to push certain syllables a little louder or softer from there. But that's like trying to define a high jump by measuring from some vague middle point instead of the peak. It doesn't work. Once you set the stressed sound as the reference point, everything changes. The part before it becomes the preparation. The weaker part after it connects more comfortably within the rhythm. You don't have to learn stress size, speed, and connection as completely separate things. Once the center is clear, the rest begins to follow more naturally. Here's the key learning principle. For English pronunciation, it's usually more effective to go from the whole to the parts than from the parts to the whole. Pronunciation is created by many muscles and speech organs moving together very quickly and very precisely. It isn't easy to control all of that consciously. So, if you begin by separating every detail, the process can become overwhelming. But if you first build the overall framework, the details settle into place much more naturally. Think about building a structure. You don't build a building by starting with the wallpaper. First, you pour the foundation and set the frame. Then you raise the columns and beams. Only then do you fill in the walls and details. English pronunciation follows the same order. First, the frame, the overall rhythm and prosody of English. This means the natural flow of strong and weak beats, pitch movement, and pacing in English. English has its own music. Just like your body instinctively responds to a drum beat, it can learn to respond to the rhythm of English. When that larger rhythm settles into your body first, pronunciation falls into place much more naturally. Second, the columns and beams, the stressed sounds. Inside the frame, the building stands because of its main supports. In English pronunciation, those supports are the stressed syllables, the moments that carry the main energy. Third, the filling, the detailed sounds. Only after the frame and support are in place do the detailed consonants and vowels become easier to fill in. Once the skeleton is stable, the details come in much more naturally. And this is very close to the order babies follow when they acquire pronunciation in their native language. First, the overall rhythm, then the stress pattern, then the individual sounds. If you try to reverse that order and build from isolated sounds upward, it's like stacking bricks before you've built the support structure. It becomes slow, difficult, and unstable. But when you move from the whole to the parts, you stop treating English as something you only analyze with your head. You begin to receive it with your body. The rhythm enters your ear, settles into your body, and then listening and speaking start to connect. So now that you understand why stress matters, let's look at how it's actually produced in the body. If you followed the previous sessions, this will feel familiar. We're connecting the theory to the physical practice. First, the power of breath. Take a deep breath in through your nose. Feel your belly expand. That strong breath rising from your core is where English stress begins. To produce a stressed syllable, you need a powerful flow of air. And that power comes from the abdominal muscles. If we use the building analogy again, this breath support from the abdomen is the ground, the foundation the building stands on. Second, creating pressure. Now lower your jaw slightly, keep the tip of your tongue behind your lower front teeth, and hold that breath for a moment. Can you feel it? The back of your tongue naturally rises, and your throat feels a bit tighter. This isn't some artificial movement you force. The abdomen, throat, and back of the tongue often work together naturally in actions like coughing or swallowing. When you briefly hold the breath this way, internal air pressure builds up. And when that prepared pressure releases, that's where the stressed sound is born. That strong energy you hear in stressed syllables like store, bread, or think. It comes from that pressure. In the building analogy, this cooperation between the abdominal force and the back of the tongue acts like the support columns, the structural frame. Third, filling in the detail with the jaw and lips. Once the columns are standing, now you can fill in the structure. What matters here is the basic movement of the jaw and the lips. When the jaw moves, the tongue often adjusts naturally with it. When the lips open or round in different ways, the shape of the tongue changes naturally too. Detailed English pronunciation works the same way. If you try to consciously control every tiny tongue movement, it gets overwhelming. The tongue moves too fast and too subtly for full conscious control. But here's the good news. You don't need to. When you get the jaw opening and lip movement right, the tongue tends to find its natural position on its own. So, to summarize this part, what matters first is to create a strong reference point for English stress through breath power rising from the abdomen, stable support from the back of the tongue, and basic positioning through the jaw and lips. Once that reference point is established, the smaller details begin to settle much more reliably. Let's wrap up today's main idea. English runs on stress timing. If you don't understand that structure and keep approaching it syllable by syllable, you'll stay trapped inside your native language's framework, no matter how many hours you practice. To build English pronunciation well, you need to follow the same order you'd use to build a structure. First, the frame. Let your body absorb the overall rhythm and prosody of English. Second, the columns. Use stressed sounds as the main reference points. Strong breath from the abdomen and natural support from the back of the tongue help create those columns. Third, the filling. Use the basic movements of the jaw and lips to shape the detailed sounds. This is close to the order babies follow when they acquire native language pronunciation. And it's one of the most natural and effective ways humans learn speech. English pronunciation is not just mouth mechanics. It's your ears and your body learning to receive a completely new sound system. This isn't about making your accent sound nicer, it's about building the foundation for better listening, better speaking, and a more natural relationship with English as a whole. In the next video, I'll take everything we've covered, the breathing, the core engagement, the pharyngeal support, the mouth positioning, and show you how they all come together to produce real English stress. That's where the training gets practical. I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.